Jud Shaver and I met in the late summer of 1979 on the campus of the University of Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. Jud had just turned 30 and I was 33. I was finishing up my PhD at the University of Chicago, just around the lake, as we used to say, and I had been hired that spring for my first university post as a new assistant professor in a tenure-track position in the huge Department of Theology with over 30 full-time faculty. Jud had finished his MA in that department in an exciting new innovative program called Christianity and Judaism in Antiquity, and he was finishing his PhD exams and working on his dissertation when we met. I was hired in that program to teach what we called Christian Origins, or New Testament. We first laid eyes on one another in the weekly seminar of the CJA program that brought together all the faculty and graduate students for a 3-hour session in which we collectively worked on a single ancient text. Whether from the Dead Sea Scrolls, one of the Church Fathers, the New Testament, the Hebrew Bible, or other Jewish texts of antiquity, everyone participated. There were a dozen faculty and as many students sitting around a table with books and notes spread out and just reading the chosen text together in its original language, Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, or Latin, and discussing it broadly. One of the faculty took the lead, but there was no instructor per se. The exciting dynamics of the program allowed one to break out of the silos of one specific field and broadly interact with others. After a few weeks, I had my eye on Jud Shaver, as he clearly stood out among all the other graduate students on so many levels. Jud was always prepared, and that is an understatement. As some of you know, precision was Jud's middle name. I remember that semester we were discussing the Church Father Origen and his commentary on the Gospel of John, dating to the early 3rd century. Jud's field was Hebrew Bible, removed in time from Origen by 1,000 years, and that was the whole point of this innovative program. The idea was that the methods and approaches of our scholarship were not field or subject specific, but generic, allowing our group with all its diversity to share insights and expertise from our own specific areas of focus. This program is now emulated in several of the most distinguished PhD programs at major universities, leaving behind the seminary model of studying religions dominated by Christian theology. All the students were encouraged to participate, and we all took our turn reading the chosen ancient text, going around the table, faculty and student alike. Jud did not speak more than any of the other students, but after a few weeks it was clear to me, as the newest and youngest faculty member in the group, that his keen insights and cutting-edge analysis of whatever point he was making stood out. In those days, most of the graduate students had a full ride for the PhD program, meaning their stipends allowed them to essentially spend all day every day on their studies. Each had a carol in the library, and I believe it was that semester or the next that Jud was chosen by the library staff for the Iron Ass Award, given to the graduate student who spent the most time glued to his or her chair and study. And it was Jud's post at his carol, on the floor where all the books related to our collective field were shelved, that brought us together. I was finishing up my dissertation at Chicago, so I was constantly in the library, and Jud was truly a fixture there, day and night. Since I was beginning to get familiar with him in the weekly seminar meetings, I began to stop by his carrel, and we would talk. One day early that fall, I suggested we go to lunch together, which usually meant walking around campus and eating a sandwich on a bench or under a tree in the beautiful, idyllic setting that is Notre Dame. And that was it. We were hooked for life. It was as if torrents of thoughts, ideas, and personal experiences began to flood our conversations. These lunch sessions were often over an hour, and we were hungry for more. I had found an intellectual soulmate. We did talk about Bible here and there, as it was our mutual area of study, me the New Testament and he the Old. But this was 1979, the year of the Iranian Revolution and our hostages, the energy crisis with gas lines, China's reform under Deng Xiaoping, Pope John Paul II's visit to Poland, Jimmy Carter's White House malaise, and Ronald Reagan in the wings. So there was all of that. But for Jud and me, our consuming passion was talking about life itself, full throttle. What's it all about, Alfie questions, personal and philosophical, historical and existential, books, films, and especially music, Dylan, Cohen, Van Morrison, Neil Young, and all the rest. It was nonstop, and incredibly intense and satisfying. Jud got his first university post in the fall of 1980 at Wheeling College, so that academic year, 1979 to 1980, including the summer, cemented our lifelong connection. He stayed closely connected to Notre Dame in South Bend, as he did not finish his dissertation and graduate until 1984, and I was one of his 2 faculty readers for that project. Jud's dissertation was outstanding. I would say the best of that era from the PhD students, and it was selected for publication in the prestigious Brown University Judaic Studies series in 1989. We were often in touch in those years, and I was finishing up my Chicago PhD dissertation also, graduating in 1981. I went on to the College of William and Mary in the fall of 1985, followed by my 33-year career at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. So we both left Notre Dame behind. When I became chair of the Department of Religious Studies for a decade, Jud offered me sage advice from his abundant administrative experience in higher education. I don't need to describe to anyone who knew Jud his amazing discipline, his keen intellect, his winning smile, his incredible sense of humor, his drive to excel, and his kindness and compassion, tempered with a sober realism. Much of what he was professionally and personally is abundantly reflected in that marvelous retirement video produced by Marymount Manhattan College. My wife Lori and I were thrilled to be at his inauguration as president of Marymount and experience firsthand the impressive ways that Jud related professionally in that high-level administrative environment. And what he accomplished at Marymount, as we all know, was beyond extraordinary. My purpose here is not to chronicle the countless hours we spent together over the next 4 decades, often at conferences or when our travels coincided, or in personal visits along the way. We had that proverbial friendship any of us are grateful to experience, in which months or even years of separation instantly melted away whenever we were able to be together. One of my most treasured show and tell items I have here before me as I write these words of remembrance is the insanely marked up copy of my first published book titled Things Unutterable, Paul's Ascent to Paradise, published by Brown University in 1986. Some years later, Jud worked through the printed copy and marked in pencil, annotating every page with suggestions, ideas, and even copy edits. Not because he thought it was a bad book, but quite to the contrary. He thought it was one of the most important books on the Apostle Paul ever published and wanted to do whatever he could to contribute to making it even better. Years later, during the height of COVID in 2020, mostly because of his input, I issued a new revised edition, the old one long out of print, incorporating quite literally hundreds of Jud's suggestions and prompts. I mailed a copy to Jud, and he told me the next time we met face to face that receiving that revised edition was one of the great pleasures of his life. Throughout my academic career spanning over 4 decades, Jud was always intensely interested in my scholarship and especially the ways in which I had pursued an active public role beyond the academy in taking the academic study of religions into the arena of major national and international media. During Jud's last years, the special times we arranged to spend together when I would attend the annual Society of Biblical Literature conferences were the most bittersweet memories of my life. The bonds, the ties, the memories, the special relationship, and the intellectual stimulation I have only experience with one other male friend in my entire life, now also departed. I am sad beyond any words for the loss, and yes, angry that this disease took him in his prime, and at the same time so very grateful that those two young guys in their early 30s crossed paths in the Notre Dame library in August of 1979.
The first time I was here, there were dancers, there was music. The place was just alive. This was an audition day, and the theater faculty were auditioning all these kids from all over the world who had amazing talent, and they just made everyone feel at home. And I was just blown away by the people, their friendliness, their sincerity, their hard work on a weekend. And then I read the mission statement. Unbelievable. It resonated with every part of my own personal life history.
You know, I think he has been engaged and in love with the college from the moment he got here. And he drank the Kool-Aid very, very early on and really was able to embrace the mission of the college.
I think he sort of understood the culture that underpinned and the ethic that underpinned our school historically.
He kept his eye strongly on the liberal arts tradition, and that was part of what the board wanted. He understood about academic excellence, but he cared about the mission, he cared about our connection with the city. He has raised money for things like the Bedford Hills program, which is dear to my heart. And that was a great commitment that Jud made. Not everyone would have done it. It was risky in the beginning, but it's now something we can be very proud of. And we see women who've had a whole new life because they've had this opportunity for a college education.
Trustees can sleep at night knowing that Jud and his team were good stewards. The capital campaign, This Is the Day campaign, really helped set the college on good financial footing.
It really took a visionary, I think, to articulate the idea that we were raising money today, which we were going to spend today in order for us to have a tomorrow.
Well, This Is the Day has proved its worth, because raising the money and spending it in a very targeted way, that's the key. But Jud had an ability to plan and to think strategically. And because of that, when he raised the money, he knew where he was going, he knew why he wanted to put the money in those places, and he put it in key academic programs that would further the mission of the college.
And make it a place that was incredibly attractive not only to students and their families, but to faculty.
And I can really appreciate what Jud has done.
The acquisition of the faculty house down the road.
The Loire Family Terrace, which was really transformative.
He has been able, by very clear planning, to create the possibility of hiring top-notch young faculty in many crucial areas of the college and to build departments and to build programs. And there's a happiness in the place. I see Jud now as someone who is full of joy.
The faculty at this college is so distinguished. So many of them are publishing in the most selective journals and monographs with the best presses, and many of them are turning out book after book and article after article. They're really scholars and artists, but they love their students. They really do. You can see it. You can hear it. If there's one reason why our students succeed, it's because a faculty that really knows its stuff cares a great deal about their learning. And these students are winning Watson, Boren, Fulbright awards, are being admitted to Ivy League graduate schools and medical schools and law schools. We're just getting more and more stars in every class. One of the things that I most want to happen for students at the college is for them to be with people who expect amazing things of them and inspire them to do amazing things and to discover that their potential is vast. This is a very diverse community, and we're united by the founding heritage of educating students for their own benefit, but not being satisfied if that's all it does. We want to educate students who will be of benefit to others. That's our heritage. And the notion that education can make all the difference in the world in helping another human being understand their potential just resonates with everything I hold dear. This is what matters to me.